You ever have one of those mornings where the coffee tastes burnt, your left sock is missing, and the sky just looks wrong? That's how the day started for me, February 18th. My birthday. 32 years old. I should have been looking forward to breakfast in bed or some goofy surprise my wife might have planned, but something in my gut already felt off before I even peeled myself off the pillow. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed, rubbing the back of my neck, and staring at her side, empty. Her pillow was cold. No note on the nightstand, no sound of the shower running, no scent of her coconut shampoo. Just quiet. Our little two-bedroom house in Missouri never felt big until that morning. We'd been married 4 years. Her name's Rachel. Smart, funny, stunning when she smiled, like the kind of girl that made you believe in Sunday mornings and country love songs again. We met at a fair, of all places. She spilled cherry lemonade on my shirt and apologized with those wide, nervous eyes that made my heart take a knee right then and there. A year later, we tied the knot under a willow tree behind her parents' place. But I won't lie to you, it wasn't always smooth. There were cracks, small ones. The kind you ignore until a storm comes through and the ceiling leaks. One of those cracks was named Adam. Her ex. She told me all about him in the early days, back when honesty still felt romantic. They dated through high school and a bit into college. Said he was her first everything, which I didn't want to know but tried to handle like a man. She swore it ended clean, said they hadn't spoken in years. I trusted her. Maybe I shouldn't have. Around 9 a.m., I texted her. Me, where you at? Birthday breakfast in bed was on my wish list. Nothing. Half an hour later, I called. Straight to voicemail. That quiet from earlier? It got louder. I thought maybe she went out to get something special. She was like that, spontaneous with surprises. So I sat around, trying not to overthink. Watched a bit of SportsCenter, fed the dog, tried to smile through the silence. By noon, I was pacing. I drove by her favorite bakery, then her best friend Claire's house. Nothing. Nobody had seen her since the night before. Claire told me Rachel had gone to that new wine bar downtown with some old friends from college. Just catching up, she said. I parked outside that bar like a damn detective in a truck with 3 air fresheners. Waited for it to open. When it finally did, the bartender, some tattooed kid barely old enough to pour a beer, remembered her. She was here last night. Pretty wasted. Left around midnight with some guy in a denim jacket. That hit me like a punch to the ribs. Did she say his name? I asked. He thought about it. I think it was Adam. My throat tightened. The room spun. I thanked him and walked out without really seeing where I was going. Adam. That name tasted like battery acid. I drove aimlessly, my fingers clenching the steering wheel so tight they went white. Then, at 2:36 p.m., I got a text. From her. Rachel, I'm sorry. I'm pregnant. It's Adam's. I didn't mean for this to happen. It was like the world stopped turning. I pulled over, shaking, heart slamming like a hammer inside my chest. Read the message again. And again. My birthday. She sent that on my birthday. A part of me wanted to scream. Another part went completely numb. I stared out the windshield, eyes dry, like my soul had just stepped outside my body and left me behind. You know what's strange? I didn't cry. Not then. I just sat there, gripping the phone, rereading that text, trying to convince myself it was some sick joke or dream. But it wasn't. It was real. My wife, drunk, had gone back to her ex. On the day I was born. And now she was pregnant by him. Most men would have hit the gas, found a motel, or never looked back. But me? I drove home. And waited. I sat on the couch for what felt like hours, but the clock insisted it had only been 23 minutes. The TV was still on, some rerun of a cooking show blabbering about the perfect crust on a pot pie. I stared straight through it, my hands resting on my knees like I was in church, waiting on a sermon that might save me. But there was no sermon. No knock at the door. No apology with mascara running down her face. Just silence. I kept checking the driveway, half hoping her little blue hatchback would pull in, even if Adam was in the passenger seat, just so I could see her eyes, see if what she did was written all over her face. But she never showed. That night I didn't eat. I didn't even turn on the lights. I just sat in the dark, thinking about how we used to laugh in this room. How she once snuck up behind me while I was watching football and dropped a whole bowl of popcorn on my head, just to be cute. I remember I didn't even get mad. I just kissed her. Now, the only thing falling on me was silence. The next morning, she texted again. "Rachel, I didn't mean for it to happen. I was drunk." I didn't even remember most of the night until Adam told me. "I'm so sorry." I stared at it. "Read it again." But it didn't make it any better. I typed back slowly. "Me, you slept with him on my birthday." "Rachel, I know." "Me, and you're sure the baby's his?" "Rachel, yeah." I set my phone down. My fingers were trembling, not from anger, just from the sheer weight of it all. I'd never felt so small, so hollowed out. My best friend, Daniel, called later that morning. I let it go to voicemail at first, but he called again. And again. So I finally answered. "Happy late birthday, man," he said. "Claire told me something happened. You alright?" I almost lied. But I couldn't. Not this time. "She cheated, Dan," I said, voice flat. "With her ex. On my birthday. And now she's pregnant." There was a long pause. Then a soft, "Jesus, man." I told him everything, every damn detail. How she left, the bar, the denim jacket, the bartender's words, and that text that felt like it cut the air right out of my lungs. "You want me to come over?" he asked. "No. Not yet. I don't even know what I want." "You gonna leave her?" I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. And that's the part that shocked me more than the betrayal, that I didn't know if I'd leave. The next few days were a blur of not sleeping, not eating, and walking through the house like a ghost. I kept replaying our years together, our wedding, the camping trip where she twisted her ankle and I carried her back 2 miles to the car, the night she cried when her dad got sick and I held her until she fell asleep. Were all those moments real? Or was I just another guy filling time until Adam came back around? Rachel finally came home 4 days later. She walked in the door slowly, like she expected me to throw a lamp at her. She looked like hell. Hair a mess, eyes bloodshot, face pale. She stood there, clutching her phone in one hand and her purse in the other. "I'm sorry," she said, barely above a whisper. I stood up, heart thudding. "You could have called. You could have come home sooner." "I was scared," she said. "Scared you'd hate me. Scared you'd never want to look at me again." "I still don't know if I do," I said, and that broke something in her. She started crying, that ugly kind of crying where your whole face folds up and you can't even breathe right. I didn't move. I let her cry right there on the hardwood, curled up like a kid. I wanted to hate her. God, I wanted to. But I didn't. After a while, I helped her to the couch. She kept saying sorry like a broken record, and I just listened. She told me how it all happened, how Adam had shown up at the bar, how they started talking, how the wine kept coming. She swore it didn't mean anything. That it was a mistake. A terrible, stupid mistake. "But you slept with him," I said. "You let him back in." I know. And now there's a baby, I added. She nodded, hands shaking. I looked at her for a long time. The same face I once kissed under falling snow. The same lips that told me, forever. And I asked myself something that's hard to say out loud. Could I forgive her? I didn't have an answer. Not yet. But I didn't ask her to leave. The next morning, I made coffee for 2 out of pure habit. She was still asleep, or at least lying motionless in the bed we once shared like it meant something permanent. I stared at the second mug for a long time before placing it on the table across from mine. I didn't know if she'd drink it. I didn't even know if I wanted her to. We hadn't talked much after she came home. We sat on the couch like awkward strangers on a long bus ride, the kind where you bump knees but don't say a word. I didn't yell. She didn't beg. We just sat. Now, with morning light pouring in through the blinds, everything felt too bright, too exposed. The quiet between us wasn't healing, it was pressure building in the walls. She finally came into the kitchen around 9, wearing one of my old hoodies. I couldn't tell if she'd done it on purpose. Her hair was a mess, and her eyes were puffy, like sleep hadn't done her any favors. "You made coffee," she said softly. "Yeah." She sat across from me and wrapped her hands around the mug. No cream, no sugar, just like always. We both stared at the steam like it might whisper some kind of answer. "Have you thought about what you want to do?" she asked, barely meeting my eyes. I nodded slowly. "A little. I'm still figuring it out." "Okay," she said. "I understand." And that was it for a while. The clinking of her spoon against the ceramic was the loudest thing in the room. She finally broke the silence. "I've got an appointment next week, with a doctor. Just to make sure the pregnancy's healthy. It's early, but I thought. You want to keep it?" I asked, cutting her off. Her face changed. I think so. I don't know yet. Part of me wants to. Part of me feels like I don't deserve to. But I wanted to be honest with you about it. I nodded again, even though every word felt like a fresh cut. "You don't owe me anything," I said. "But I appreciate the honesty now. I wish it had come a little sooner." She looked down, and her fingers curled tighter around the mug. "Do you still love him?" I asked, surprising even myself with the question. "No," she said quickly. "No. I don't. I swear. It wasn't about love. It was weak. It was stupid and selfish and, God, I don't even know who I was that night." "You were the woman who promised me forever," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. She winced. "I know. And I broke it. I broke you." I looked away, jaw tight. "You didn't break me. Not yet." And that was the truth. I wasn't broken. Cracked, sure. Bent out of shape? Hell yeah. But something inside me was still standing, even if it was swaying in the wind like a porch swing in a storm. The next few days passed like we were living in a suspended version of our old life. She'd clean up the kitchen, do laundry, even ask if I wanted to watch a movie together, but everything had a ghost behind it. Every smile she gave me looked borrowed. Every glance felt like it came with an apology wrapped around it. One night, I found myself sitting in the garage, the cold concrete under my boots, holding the hammer she gave me our first Christmas together. I don't know why I held it. Maybe just to remember a version of us that hadn't been poisoned by secrets. Daniel came by that weekend with a six-pack and a look that said he didn't know what to say but knew I needed him to show up. "You look like a man who's been hit by a semi," he said, handing me a cold beer. "Feels about right," I said. We sat on the porch in folding chairs and drank in silence. "You still love her?" he asked after a while. I didn't answer at first. Just watched a pair of squirrels chasing each other along the fence like they didn't have a care in the world. Yeah, I finally said. I think I do. He nodded slowly. Then that's the worst kind of pain there is. I let out a bitter laugh. You're telling me. He leaned back. Look, man, forgiving someone doesn't mean you're weak. But forgetting what they did? That might break you. I didn't say anything. He finished his beer, clapped me on the shoulder, and said, "You'll know what to do when it's time." That night, I found Rachel curled up on the couch watching The Notebook. The same movie she forced me to watch on our first anniversary. "Can I sit?" I asked. She nodded, surprised. We didn't talk. We just sat there in the glow of the TV, two people trying to remember how to be close. I didn't know if we'd make it. I didn't know if I could raise another man's child. But I knew I wasn't ready to walk away. Not yet. The air in the living room was heavy that morning, though the sun was shining in like it had every other day. Rachel was pacing near the window, biting at her thumbnail, holding a folded piece of paper with the doctor's name and address on it. "My appointment's at 11, she said. "I'm leaving in 20. I nodded. She looked at me the way someone might glance at a stranger who once meant the world to them. "You don't have to come," she added quickly. "I know it's a lot." I sipped my coffee, burnt again, because she always forgot to clean the pot. I didn't mind today. My thoughts were elsewhere. "I'll go," I said. "I want to." Her shoulders dropped a little, and I couldn't tell if that was relief or something sadder. The drive to the doctor's office was quiet. She fiddled with the radio, then gave up. I kept both hands on the wheel, eyes forward. I could feel her watching me every few seconds, but I didn't look over. I wasn't ready to pretend everything was fine. The waiting room smelled like antiseptic and orange air freshener. Rachel checked in while I sat down with a magazine I had no intention of reading. Some pregnant woman in a purple shirt across from us smiled at Rachel like they were in the same club. I felt the sting of it, like I was just the outsider tagging along. "Rachel Summers," the nurse called. "You can both come in, if you want." Rachel turned to me. "You okay with that?" I nodded, stood up, and followed them back. The ultrasound room was cold. Rachel lay back on the table, lifting her shirt slowly. The nurse applied the gel and pressed down with the wand. The screen flickered, then buzzed to life. "There we go," the nurse said. "Looks like you're about 6.5 weeks. Strong heartbeat." I stared at the black and white blob. It didn't look like anything, really. Not a baby. Not a person. Just a dot swimming in a storm of static. But it hit me in a way I didn't expect. That's his kid. And maybe her future. I didn't speak. Rachel looked at me, trying to read my face, but I didn't give her anything. We drove home in silence again, this time with the radio on just to fill the gap. That night, she came into the bedroom, my bedroom now, holding a mug of chamomile tea like a peace offering. "Thank you for coming today," she said, voice soft. "Sure." She lingered in the doorway like she wasn't sure if she was allowed inside. "I've been thinking," she said, "about everything. About how much I hurt you. About this baby." I didn't say anything, just waited. "I know it's his," she said. "But this life growing inside me, it's still innocent. It didn't ask to be made like this. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. But I'm not expecting you to fix it. Or to raise it. Or to forgive me if you're not ready." I looked at her then. Really looked. And I saw the same girl I married, only this version was cracked and scared and maybe, just maybe, truly sorry. "You broke me," I said. "But I'm not staying because I'm a fool. I'm staying because I still see you in there. And I want to believe that maybe, just maybe, we can find something real again." Tears rolled down her cheeks. She nodded and whispered, "I want that too." She didn't come to bed that night. She gave me space. But for the first time in days, I slept without waking up in a sweat. The next morning, she made breakfast. French toast. My favorite. We didn't say much, but something was different. A tiny shift. Like we were rebuilding, one brick at a time. I didn't know what kind of man I was becoming through all this. Maybe a fool. Maybe a saint. Or maybe just a husband still trying to hold on to love, even when it threatened to slip through his fingers. But I knew one thing. I hadn't given up yet. And neither had she. We didn't talk about the baby for a few days after the appointment. It hung over us like an invisible painting, always there, but we pretended not to notice. We fell into a rhythm that felt eerily familiar, her folding laundry in the living room, me mowing the yard, both of us dancing around each other like two people who used to know all the steps. Saturday rolled around, and I found myself walking through the grocery store beside her, just like old times. She held the shopping list, I pushed the cart. We used to argue over cereal brands and which coffee tasted less like cardboard. Now, every item we put into the cart felt like a test we weren't sure we were passing. As we turned into the frozen food aisle, I heard a voice I hadn't heard in years. "Rachel?" It was him. The ex. The father of the baby. The man who got my wife drunk and then slept with her, on the day I was born, of all damn days. Rachel froze. Her grip on the cart handle tightened, knuckles white. I stopped walking, heart thudding in my chest like a war drum. He looked exactly like I remembered from those old photos, tall, smug, and walking around like the world owed him applause just for showing up. "I didn't think I'd run into you here," he said, casually glancing at me like I was the afterthought in my own life. "Hey," Rachel said stiffly. "This is unexpected." His eyes flicked to her stomach, still flat for now. "Guess congratulations are in order, huh?" I stepped between them slightly, like instinct kicked in before my mind caught up. "Rachel and I are shopping," I said. "You want something?" He gave a smirk. "Just being friendly. No need to get worked up, man." I wasn't worked up. Not outwardly. But inside, I was boiling. Rachel put a hand on my arm. "Let's just go," she said, voice quiet. We did. But I could feel his eyes on us all the way to the checkout. And something about his calm, casual smirk lit a fire in my gut that I couldn't put out, no matter how hard I tried. Back in the truck, I didn't speak. Neither did she. It wasn't until we were halfway home that she finally said something. "I didn't know he was going to be there." "I know. I haven't spoken to him since that night," she added. "Not once." That mattered more than I expected. I believed her. But the question still hovered, was he going to try to be involved? I pulled into the driveway, killed the engine, and stared out the windshield. "You going to tell him about the baby?" I asked. She looked down at her hands. "I don't know. Maybe I should. But I'm scared. He's not a stable guy. Never was." I nodded. "So what are we doing here, Rachel? If this baby's coming, are you planning to raise it with me? Or am I just the guy who's here until the truth gets too heavy to carry?" She reached over, placed her hand over mine. "I don't have answers yet. I wish I did. But I want you in this, if you're willing. I want to rebuild this life with you. I don't want his. I want us. With or without this baby." I looked at her, really looked. Her eyes weren't filled with games or half-lies. Just raw hope, and fear. And yeah, a little shame too. That night, after unloading the groceries, we sat on the porch with 2 beers between us. "Do you remember our trip to Michigan?" she asked out of nowhere. "Of course. You made us camp in a tent in the rain. She smiled. You were so mad. I laughed softly. That's because you forgot the stakes for the tent and we slept on rocks. She leaned into me, just a little. I think about that trip a lot. Back when it was just you and me, figuring it all out. I nodded. Feels like a different lifetime. Maybe it was, she said. But I'd like to try to find that again. Or something close to it. I didn't have a romantic answer. I just sat there, letting the night settle over us like a blanket that had holes but still did the job. The truth was, I didn't know what kind of man I was becoming through all this. But I knew what kind of man I wanted to be, one who could look pain in the eye and keep walking. And for now, that meant staying. It had been almost a week since we ran into Adam. Rachel hadn't brought him up again, and neither had I. But the image of him standing there, smirking like he still had a piece of her, kept playing on a loop in my head like some cruel home movie. I went back to work Monday morning, trying to let routine fill in the cracks. Folks at the hardware store had no idea what was going on in my life, and for a few hours each day, I liked it that way. I stocked shelves, loaded bags of mulch, and helped old Missy Peterson pick out a new doorknob like it was the biggest decision in the world. At lunch, I sat out back on the bench with a ham sandwich and a bottle of orange soda, the way I had 100 times before. But I wasn't thinking about hammers or paint swatches. I was thinking about names. If Rachel kept the baby, and deep down, I think we both knew she would, it would need a name. And I couldn't shake the thought that Adam might have one picked out already. Or worse, that he'd feel entitled to give the kid his last name. That night, I brought it up. We were eating dinner, leftover spaghetti, no meatballs. She had her hair pulled back, and she looked worn out but peaceful. Have you thought about a name yet? I asked. She paused mid-bite. No. Not really. I nodded and waited. A few seconds passed. I don't think I want Adam to have any say in that, she added. That surprised me. You sure? She looked up at me. He gave me one night. You gave me years. You stayed after everything. That means something. I didn't say anything, but I felt my chest tighten, like I could breathe a little deeper just hearing those words. Then she said something that knocked the wind out of me. I was thinking, if it's a boy, maybe we could name him after you. I blinked. After me? She nodded. Not your full name, just something close. A middle name maybe. I want him or her to know that the man who chose to love me after I shattered everything is the one who helped build their life. I sat back in my chair, trying to swallow the lump in my throat. I hadn't cried since I was a kid, but that moment came damn close. You really mean that? I asked. I do. We sat there quietly for a while. The spaghetti got cold. Later that evening, I stepped out to the shed and stood there in the dark, staring at all the half-finished projects I never got around to, the old bookshelf I meant to sand down, the broken lamp I swore I'd fix, a box of tools from my dad I never quite knew what to do with. That's what this whole thing felt like, unfinished, dented, but still here. Still waiting to be put back together. The next morning, Rachel was at the stove when I came into the kitchen. Pancakes this time. I used to joke she only made breakfast when she was nervous or trying to say sorry without saying it. You've been quiet lately, she said. I've been thinking, I replied. About what this kid's life will look like. And about what kind of man I'm going to be when they ask me how I stayed through all this. She turned around, spatula in hand. What would you tell them? I thought for a second. That I believed in their mom. Even when it hurt. Her eyes welled up, but she didn't let the tears fall. She just nodded and turned back to the pancakes. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. I knew I couldn't erase what happened. But I could choose what came next. Maybe forgiveness wasn't a single act, Maybe it was a series of small choices, morning by morning, conversation by conversation. I wasn't sure how this story would end. But I wasn't walking away from it either. By the time Rachel hit the 10-week mark, the morning sickness had kicked in hard. She couldn't keep anything down, not even her favorite buttered toast. I tried making her smoothies, crackers with peanut butter, ginger tea. Half the stuff came from tips on some pregnancy forum I read late at night while she was sleeping. She didn't ask me to do those things. I just did them. Because no matter what happened between us, she was still the woman I married. And I guess part of me still believed love was more about what you did than what you felt. The doctor scheduled her first ultrasound on a rainy Thursday. I took the whole day off work. Told my boss I had family stuff. That's how I said it, family, like I was trying the word on for size again. We drove in silence most of the way. Rachel kept fidgeting with the hem of her sleeve, and I could tell she was nervous. I was too, but I didn't show it. I had to be the steady one. I had to be the guy she could lean on, even if a piece of me still ached every time I looked at her. The ultrasound room was cold and sterile. The technician was a woman named Megan, bright smile, probably late 20s. She was kind and didn't ask a single personal question, which I appreciated. Rachel lay back on the table and pulled up her shirt while I sat in the corner, heart hammering in my chest like I was waiting for a verdict. I wasn't sure what I expected, to see Adam's face in a grainy blur? To feel some kind of instant connection or resentment? Maybe both? But when the screen lit up and that tiny flicker of a heartbeat appeared, all I felt was quiet. Like the world stopped turning for just a second. Rachel looked over at me with tears in her eyes, and I could see the same wonder I was feeling. She didn't say anything, but I knew she was thinking it too. This is real. This is happening. Megan handed us a little printout of the ultrasound and left the room. Rachel held the photo like it was made of glass. I don't know what I'm doing, she whispered. Neither do I replied. But I reached over and wrapped my fingers around hers anyway. On the drive home, she asked if we could stop at the craft store. I thought maybe she wanted yarn or something to keep her distracted. But she came out with a cheap magnetic frame, the kind you stick on your fridge. That night, after dinner, she put the ultrasound picture in the frame and pressed it onto the refrigerator door. There it was. Front and center. Not hidden in a drawer. Not folded inside a book. Right there next to our wedding invitation magnet and the to-do list I kept meaning to update. I stood there for a long time, staring at it. It hit me then, not all at once, but in pieces, that this baby, no matter how it got here, was going to be a part of my life now too. A piece of my world. Maybe even a piece of me, in ways that had nothing to do with blood. Rachel came up behind me, arms wrapped around my middle, cheek against my back. I want this to work, she said softly. I know I don't deserve it. But I want it. I turned around and looked at her. Really looked. Not as the woman who had broken me, but as the woman who stayed broken with me. Trying to make sense of the wreckage she helped cause. I want it to work too, I said. But it's gonna take time. And truth. Even when it's hard. She nodded. I'll give you both. And for the first time in a long while, I believed her. Later that night, as I got ready for bed, I caught myself smiling at that little picture on the fridge. I didn't know if I was ready to be a father. Hell, I didn't even know if I was ready to be a husband again. But I was ready to try. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough for now. A couple weeks passed after the ultrasound, and things started to settle into something that looked a little like peace. Not the loud, joyful kind, but the quiet, fragile kind. Like walking on thin ice and hoping it holds. Rachel started smiling more, even if it was just a little. I caught her humming while folding laundry, one hand absent-mindedly resting on her belly. That sound used to fill our home once. It hadn't in a long while. I didn't say anything. I just listened. As for me, I was trying. Really trying. I started coming home early from work just to be near her. We cooked together. Well, she mostly sat on a stool while I chopped and burned things. One night, we sat on the couch and watched a home renovation show. She leaned into me and fell asleep with her head on my shoulder. I didn't move for a full hour. I let the TV play and just listened to her breathing. But with every good day, there came a shadow. A little voice that whispered in my ear when I was driving alone or brushing my teeth, "She cheated on you. And now you're raising his child." One night, that voice got too loud. We were in bed, lights off, just a faint glow from the streetlight outside casting stripes across the ceiling. I lay there staring at them, wide awake, while Rachel breathed softly beside me. I couldn't take it anymore. "Did you love him?" I asked. Rachel stirred. "What?" I turned to face her. "Adam. That night. Did you love him?" She blinked a few times, her face pale in the dim light. "No," she said quietly. "It wasn't love. It was escape. Stupid, selfish escape." "Why him?" She swallowed hard. "Because he reminded me of who I was before life got real. Before bills and miscarriages and quiet dinners where we just stared at our food. That night. I wanted to feel like someone else. That hit like a cold wave." "And now?" I asked. She sat up slowly, hugging her knees. "Now I wish I could erase it. But I can't. I wish this baby was yours. But it's not. And I'm scared every day that one morning, I'll wake up and you'll be gone." I sat up too, the sheets falling off my shoulders. "I think about it," I admitted. "Sometimes I imagine packing a bag and just driving until I forget." Her face crumpled like a paper cup. I grabbed her hand before she could turn away. "But I don't leave, Rachel. I haven't left. That has to count for something." Tears rolled down her cheeks as she nodded. I pulled her close, and we sat there, side by side, two broken people trying to make one whole life. That weekend, something small happened that shook me in a different way. I was out in the front yard raking leaves when an older man pulled up in a rusted pickup truck. He leaned out the window and waved. "You Sam?" he asked. "Yeah." "Who's asking?" He handed me a padded envelope through the window. "From Adam." Before I could say anything, the truck rolled off down the road. I opened the envelope right there on the porch. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a check. The note was short. "Sam. I don't expect you to like me, and I sure as hell don't expect you to forgive me. But that kid is mine, and I won't pretend otherwise. This money isn't for Rachel, it's for the baby. Do with it what you will. Adam." The check was for $5,000. I stood there for a long while, the wind stirring leaves around my boots. Part of me wanted to tear it up. Another part wanted to cash it immediately and put it toward diapers, formula, and the crib we hadn't picked out yet. I didn't tell Rachel about it that night. I just placed the envelope inside my sock drawer, like it was a secret I wasn't ready to deal with. Because the truth was, even forgiveness had cracks. And sometimes those cracks let in more than just light. They let in doubt. They let in decisions. They let in questions that didn't have easy answers. A week after that envelope showed up, Rachel brought home a baby registry catalog. She'd circled half the pages, it looked like, all in light pink marker. She acted casual about it, plopping it down next to my coffee mug at breakfast, but her eyes darted to mine like she was bracing for rejection. "I thought maybe we could look at it together," she said, stirring her tea. "You know, when you have time." I flipped it open right there at the table, not because I was ready, but because I knew how much it mattered to her. I'd never shopped for a crib before. Or a stroller, or baby monitors, or breast pumps. It was overwhelming, honestly. Everything was expensive. Everything had deluxe or smart or premium in the name. And every time I saw the word dad on a product label, something in my chest tightened. Because I didn't know if that was who I was going to be. That Saturday, we drove to one of those massive baby stores. The kind that smells like plastic and lavender and feels like walking into a whole new version of life you're not sure you belong in. Rachel moved from display to display with a mix of awe and nervous energy, her hands brushing over soft blankets, bottles, and bassinets. I followed a few steps behind, trying to keep the anxiety off my face. She stopped in front of a white wooden crib. "This one," she said, half whispering. It had curved edges and carved little stars on the headboard. Nothing flashy. Just clean, soft, and quiet. Like something you'd want to put Hope, Indiana. "It's nice," I said, clearing my throat. "I thought it felt peaceful," she replied. That word. Peaceful. I hadn't felt anything like peace in months, but somehow, just standing there with her looking at that crib, I felt a flicker of it. Then I saw the price tag, $579.99. Rachel's face changed when she saw it too. She bit her lip and stepped back, like she'd gotten too close to something she didn't deserve. "Let's keep looking," she said quickly. "It's probably too much." I didn't answer right away. My hand had gone to my pocket, my fingers brushing the corner of that check still folded in my wallet. Adam's money. I hated even thinking about using it. But I looked at her, really looked, and saw not the woman who'd betrayed me, but the woman carrying a life. The woman waking up sick every morning, still managing to hum through the worst of it, still trying to rebuild trust in a man she crushed. That night, while she slept, I pulled the envelope from my drawer and wrote a sticky note, for the crib. Next morning, I slid the envelope under her tea mug. She blinked down at it, confused. Then slowly opened it, saw the check, and then the note. Her eyes shot up to mine. You're okay with this?" "No," I said, honestly. "I'm not okay with much of this. But I want this baby to have what they need. And I want us to stop pretending like we're walking on glass." Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't want you to feel obligated. I'm not doing it for him," I said. "I'm doing it for the kid. And maybe a little for the man I want to be." She covered her mouth with her hand and nodded. That afternoon, we went back and bought the crib. We brought it home in pieces, and I spent the evening assembling it in what used to be the guest room. Rachel sat on the floor beside me, sorting screws and reading the manual while I cursed under my breath every time I dropped a bolt. At one point, I stopped, leaned back against the wall, and just looked at the frame taking shape. It hit me like a wave. There's going to be a baby in here. And I'm going to be the one waking up at night. Holding it. Feeding it. Loving it. Rachel reached out and gently placed her hand on mine. "Do you think you'll be able to love him, or her?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "I think I already do. And that's what scares me most." She nodded slowly. "Me too." When we finished, I stepped back and took it all in. The crib, the mobile she'd picked with the little woodland animals, the soft yellow paint on the walls we'd done together the week before. For the first time in months, the room didn't feel like a shrine to what we lost. It felt like a beginning. Even if it came from something broken. Even if the cracks were still healing. Even if we were still learning to breathe again. The morning our daughter was born, it was raining. One of those steady, whispering rains that makes the world feel softer, quieter. I remember standing by the hospital window, watching it streak down the glass, thinking it was the perfect kind of day for starting over. Rachel had gone into labor just after midnight. I'd been dead asleep when she shook me awake, her eyes wide, hand pressed to her belly. "It's time," she said, her voice both scared and certain. The next 9 hours were a blur: nurses, monitors, the sound of her breathing through pain, my own heart pounding louder than anything else. I held her hand through every contraction. Wiped the sweat from her brow. Whispered things I didn't even know I believed just to keep her grounded. "You've got this. I'm here. We're okay." When our daughter finally entered the world, she let out a cry that filled the whole room and cracked something open in me I didn't even know was sealed shut. They laid her on Rachel's chest, all pink and wrinkled and squirmy, and in that moment, everything else, the betrayal, the doubts, the pain, faded into the background. I stepped forward, reached out, and touched her tiny hand. She gripped my finger like she knew me. Like I was hers. And just like that, I was. They cleaned her up and wrapped her in a soft hospital blanket. The nurse turned to me with a smile. "Would you like to hold your daughter, Dad?" That word. Dad. I nodded, tears already blurring my vision. My arms felt unsteady as I took her, but as soon as she settled into my chest, something anchored me. She was so small. So impossibly real. She looked nothing like Adam. She looked like life. Like forgiveness. Like the promise of something better. Rachel watched me with eyes full of exhaustion and awe. "What do we name her?" she asked softly. We hadn't picked a name. We'd talked about it a few times, tossed around ideas, but never settled on one. Maybe because we weren't sure we'd make it this far. Maybe because deep down, we were waiting for the moment to feel right. I looked down at the baby, her eyes fluttering open for the first time. "Hope," I said. Rachel smiled, tired, broken, healed all at once. "Hope," she repeated. "That's perfect." We filled out the birth certificate together. Hope Grace Taylor. We both cried when we signed it. Later that night, when the visitors had gone and the lights were dim, I sat beside Rachel's bed, holding Hope while she slept. Rachel was asleep too, worn out and peaceful for the first time in what felt like years. I looked down at the baby, and my voice cracked when I spoke. "I'm not your real dad. But I promise I'll be a real father." She didn't answer, of course. Just sighed and wriggled in my arms, her tiny mouth forming shapes in a dream. But I knew. That night, I made a choice. Not because I was a saint. Not because I forgot what Rachel did. But because somewhere along the way, I realized forgiveness isn't about erasing what happened. It's about choosing love anyway. Choosing to believe in tomorrow, even when yesterday broke you. Rachel and I still had a long road ahead of us. Trust was still fragile. Some days were harder than others. There were moments when a look or a word would reopen old wounds. But we talked. We held on. We remembered what we'd been through. And what we chose after. I'm not the man I used to be. I'm not the man Rachel married. But maybe that's a good thing. Because the man I am now, he knows pain. He knows loss. He knows what it means to forgive when it feels impossible. And every night, when I walk past Hope's crib and watch her breathing in the moonlight, I remember why I stayed. Because she didn't ask for any of this. But she gave me everything. A reason to keep going. A reason to forgive. A reason to love again. And that, I think, is more than enough.